Hello, Audio Alien here. I made a Xeno hybrid. Let's get into it. Believe it or not, the first thing I started with were the hands, which were honestly the most complex and detailed part of this piece, so I wanted to make sure I really had it down, and I used some Xeno and human hand references to start, and I wanted to pose her like she was squatting down, and I wanted to keep the muscles very, very refined, toned, and tucked, and have her kind of gazing upward, potentially towards some kind of creature. I didn't know at the time it was going to be a kitty, but I ended up drawing a little frightened kitten, kind of as a nod to Jonesy from Alien in the series. I really liked the kitty. Start the base, I went with this very pollen yellow-esque kind of base using titanium white and a little bit of tempera yellow, which is going to be kind of like the middle sibling between acrylic paint and watercolors, so it's like median opacity, if that makes sense. And I'm going to coat that over the entirety of the piece. Undertoning is so important. I know it seems like an extra step, but it really, really helps. Next, I wanted to start to make my wall shades, so I took a little bit of black into that pollen yellow and started to make a very light gray and kind of blush that through the edges of the left side of the canvas, really leaning into the shadows of the steel of the walls, keeping the yellow undertones as we do so. And I'm going to start to build depth with our steel and start to give it a little bit of layers and varying shades of gray, still staying in that cooler toned gray palette. As we start to build up the wall shades and give it some varying depths throughout, I want to go over why I kind of made this character. I have realized that I've made maybe one or two original characters in my life as far as the Fey Wolf and one other that doesn't immediately come to mind, but I don't really re-sketch or re-go into these characters or creatures that I design, and I wanted to make this one into a series and kind of give her almost a developing story a little bit, not quite a comic book, but just have her in multiple pieces. And I really wanted to give her lots of layer and detail and give her something familiar, and I really kind of feel like an alien out of orbit sometimes. And I know that I'm not the only one that feels that way, whether it's with specific hobbies or likes in music or style or even how I do my eyeliner. Sometimes I feel like a little bit of an outsider, but I find some relief in knowing that most people tend to feel like that at some point in their life, and maybe in expressing this and creating an alien creature to kind of show all of my little hyperfixations and things that I admire and things that I enjoy will help to kind of alleviate some of those feelings of being an alien or being isolated. No pun on the game, I swear, but that is a really cool game. You should check it out. Also, I feel like I should say something about the onesies. I was streaming on Twitch for the whole week of Halloween as we were painting this, so I am in a couple of different costumes, so don't mind that. We were just having fun, but if you ever want to check out our Twitch stream and see what I'm working on live, definitely come through. It's at Faded Alien on Twitch. With the wall base and shadows basically done, now we get to have the fun part of kind of dinging it up and making it look a little grimy. I kind of want our character to look like she's just escaped a laboratory, maybe at like the bottom of a basement. She's supposed to be a human xenomorph cat, some kind of xeno-human project happened and a cat hair fell in the test tube, and now it's got 3 hybrids instead of the 2, and she's escaped, and I want to kind of give it this story, you know. So she's emerged from this basement, and I want to kind of grunge it up a little bit using my black tempera and really thinning it out with some water, dispersing it primarily in the top corner, and then slowly pacing that out and kind of distributing it all over the piece and moving it to the floor. After getting it super grungy and dirty, I'm going back in with my yellow tempera and I'm re-highlighting that caution tape kind of print across the steel and making sure that that's still very predominantly yellow and not so much that like murky gray shade. Other than that, we're now going to start to focus on the skin, and I wanted her to be very kind of peach, pinky, nude, almost like Mew, the Pokemon, and I wanted to keep her kind of beetle-y skin texture, so very, very shiny and smooth, but I realized later that beetles kind of have pores. Second-guessed what I was doing, and then continued with the smooth texture, so for a brief moment you might see me kind of doing tiny little needle-like dots across the arms and the face. We later scratched that and continued with the base, so ignore that step. We then went in with our highlight and our shadow. I make one base shade for the character, and then I make a shadow and a highlight, and then I'll make further, more in-depth shades as we start to get more detailed into the body, but I like to start with 3 basic colors. I gradually start to build depth to the shadow by making a maroon shade and building the black tone in it by building tempera black as I start to lock in on the darkest most points of those shadows of the body. And I'm continuing to look at the reference of the girl kind of crouched and the xenomorph anatomy to see where the general tubes and kind of veinier works might sit. And hybridizing that with my own ideas of the human skin texture blended with the beetly kind of hard, what's the word? That. And I also incorporated some spikes, kind of like an iguana, and I wanted to keep those looking kind of keratiny and thin, so I made sure that those were more peachy shade than primary pink. And then I highlighted and shadowed a little bit towards where the skin meets those horns just to give it a bit of a raised texture. At this point, I decided to give it a little break because my paint paper was kind of curling in. This is what it looks like when it's dried, and back to the next day. We are now going to direct our attention to the little kitty in the vent. I decided to make our brown tabby kitty brown tabby, and the base color for that is going to be a very rust orange. So I mixed a 1-to-1 ratio of red and yellow tempera, taking that remainder of a 1 orange to a 1-to-1 ratio of raw umber mix, and then made that our base shade. Filling that in, I then incorporated titanium white to build our highlights, and then made raw umber and black tempera mixtures to make our striping, and just continue to do that in multiple layers to build our fur texture. Now I get to switch between characters. We're gonna finish up by adding some more highlights. I felt like she didn't look shiny enough and like glossy enough like beetles do, so I went in with just straight white and I started adding very, very bright blots all around the spikes, the arms, the face, all of the biggest raised points, and did just huge cartoony marks of white. Normally I don't do this, but I wanted to be bold and give myself a little bit of a change in my style. After I painted the cat and did our classic fur texturing methods, and then I went ahead and continued to go back and forth between the two, kind of adding shadows, textures, whiskers, little hairs, so on and so forth into our character. I wanted to make sure that she was very much base Xeno with our own personal twist to her. After that, we went ahead and took off the paint tape, and you get something kind of like this. She is totally stunning. I am absolutely in love with her and cannot wait to incorporate her into future art pieces. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you want to hang out with us live, be sure to come through on Twitch for any more further tips and tricks, as well as just some really fun hangout time. Thank you so much once again, and I will see you very soon. Bye, friends.